Hestia Ann Dixon, my younger sister, the Luna of my old pack and the woman my mate chose over me. She was pregnant. I turned to the male sitting beside her in the Alpha's seat, guilt and regret crossing his striking features when he refused to meet me in the eye. If the reason you called me here is because of this nonsense, I gestured between my sister and mate, then it would appear I wasted my time. With all due respect, Beta Dixon, I am an Alpha. I have many and much more important things to do than discuss petty mate bonds. If it wasn't obvious enough, I'll make myself clear. I stood up, not caring for the gazes burning into my skin, not even his gaze that pleaded with me to spare him a glance. Whether or not she has this pup has nothing to do with me. Luna Walker's mate has nothing to do with me. In fact, none of you have anything to do with me outside of pack business. If you're worried about my interference, don't. I won't say nor do anything. To put it simply, I don't want him. I didn't want him for the past 4 years, since he rejected me and you all left me to die. Rest assured that seeing him again won't change anything. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have much more important things to attend to. I held my head high, walking off with my beta trailing behind me. I saw Landon flinch with hurt from what I said. If it stung so much, he'd have to get used to it. I wasn't going to sugarcoat my words if they were just going to waste my time. Just as I reached the door, it abruptly pulled open, and I came face to face with the most beautiful man I've ever seen in my life. Dark, crystal gray eyes bore into me, and I found myself go still. Alpha Razel Locksworth. The bloodlust Alpha. I've never seen Alpha Locksworth before, not even in photos, but there was no mistaking it. His presence was telling enough. All the blood circulating inside me getting impossibly hotter as he held my gaze. His mere presence was like a shockwave coursing through my veins. I felt my body go stiff. Every atom inside me was reacting to this man. He, who was said to have been crueler than rogues and demons alike, had me feeling lightheaded. He who had no regard for anything or anyone other than himself and his pack had me feeling strange. Alpha Locksworth stood intimidatingly tall, his lean, sturdy figure cladded in a white dress shirt with the first 2 buttons undone, hugging his body in a way to showcase his well-defined chest. Black dress pants that highlighted his long legs fit around him perfectly. Fit, proportionate torso with broad shoulders connecting to his thick arms at his sides. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, exposing his forearms riddled with taut muscles. I wondered for a brief moment if he had tattoos underneath that shirt. Then there was his scent. The thick, enticing scent of musk with a mix of rosewood entranced me. He was overflowing with dominance, pure instinct of authority and domination hidden in the depths of his hooded eyes. The hooded eyes that stared right back at me. The concept of time was lost. My body, on its own accord, starts feeling flushed with heat at the thought of him half naked. The pit of my stomach is doing flips when I trail my eyes around his features, soaking him in completely. His chiseled face gifted with a strong jawline, high cheekbones, clean-shaven face, sharp, prominent nose, lips plump and alluringly seductive with luscious, raven-like hair attempted to be slicked back only to have strands fall over his eyes. I could almost feel my fingers twisting around his locks. He looked flawless, like the goddess above had specifically taken her time to hand-sculpt him to utter perfection. Right to the very tips of his toes, he had unparalleled beauty. Something so beautiful could be so terrifying. His facade may have the beauty of a god, but I knew there was more to him than that. My wolf perked up, walking out from the corner of her spot and stared at him blankly. Then she tilts her head to the side and ever so slowly, her tail starts swishing back and forth in excitement. She remained quiet, but usually attentive at the sudden appearance of Razel Locksworth. What the actual hell? His consuming steely gaze kept me captive from straying away from him. He kept his eyes on me as mine was on him. I could distinctly feel Noah's prying eyes and increasing confusion between the 2 of us. Mate? The voice broke me out of the trance completely. I whipped my head around to see Hestia standing up, her eyes trained on Alpha Locksworth with fierce hunger buried within her blue eyes. I couldn't stop the surprise on my face. Alpha Locksworth was her mate? Now, before some of you decide to call it quits 'cause she's his mate, I suggest you read a bit more lo. A wave of unjust disappointment washed over me. The beginnings of a frown was unconsciously tugging at my lips. My wolf remained quiet, no reaction whatsoever, but kept her attention on Locksworth even after what Hestia had just announced. Alpha Locksworth, we thank you for coming here to talk about the situation with my daughter, Hestia. Alpha Crestfield, if you will, Alpha Walker still has yet to say his part. Benicio sounded relieved. I turned my attention back to Locksworth, who was still looking at me. I was starting to feel self-conscious from his gaze. Realizing now just how weird it must have been to be staring at each other for almost a minute, I snapped myself out of my Razel-induced fascination. Clearing my throat, I looked back Benicio with narrowed eyes. Whatever the hell was going on, they could do without me. I already seemed to have expected too much of them. The most I could do now was wander around and see if I can catch anything here. That is, if I don't get caught. I kept my eyes locked on the beta, who seemed very shifty from Locksworth's presence. I couldn't blame him. The Alpha's presence behind me was so overwhelming I almost didn't notice the man who stood behind him. Presumably his beta. A tall guy, slightly shorter than Locksworth, with sandy blonde hair and brown eyes stood calmly by his side. I couldn't detect any fleeting emotion from him, but I could see the amusement in those eyes. He and Noah would get along quite well. I felt heat crawl up from my back, heat from the smoldering gaze of the Alpha behind me chaining me to the ground I stood on. His attention initiated foreign sensations from puffing out inside me. My wolf purred, laying on her back with her paws outstretched. She was seriously confusing me. I have no business here. If it isn't pack-related, I'm not interested. I reply sharply, not bothering to hide the venom lacing my words. I turned to leave, shooting them one last glare, and strode my way to the door. I'll have to second that. I didn't come here to entertain your daughter's delusion from 3 weeks ago, Dixon. I freeze. The deep, raspy rumble from his chest lured out ripples of shudders from me. Locksworth directed his attention to Benicio. His eyes hardened, narrowing into slits as he released more of his dominance into the air. Most of the occupants in the room tensed. My wolf barked, hungrily watching the ascending signs of a fight. She ruffled her fur out, eyes switching back and forth between the Alpha and our blood-related father. I could feel her excitement trying to overrun my emotions into a high. Benicio glared angrily at Locksworth. His wolf peeked out, eyes slowly inking red. The shaking fists at his side let everyone know of his arising temperament. Are you denying my daughter? Your mate? Alpha Locksworth rose a brow, amusement dancing in place with a hint of anger under those smoldering dark eyes. Though his expression was unchanging, the way his body stiffened said otherwise. He didn't like the tone Benicio was giving him, but he was quick to restrain the growl I knew was bubbling in the pit of his chest. His muscles were tight, itching to reach out and put the beta threatening him in place. Frankly, yes. I'll say this only once. She isn't my mate, but she is a liar. His eyes drift to Hestia, whose face is red. She looked embarrassed under his gaze, uncomfortably fidgeting in her stance. With her eyes glued the floor, she slowly took her seat as Landon threw her a nasty look. I could feel her wolf whine at the pressure being pointed at her. If you strongly believe that, then I'm sure you won't mind if we go to the moon goddess's sacred pool. Beta Benicio. Landon finally speaks, appalled at the challenge directed toward Locksworth. Benicio, ignoring Landon's interjection, continues to challenge him silently. I can see the start of a smirk on his face, but Alpha Locksworth was quick to dismiss it with his own. A slow, dark, cynical smirk knowing no bounds of mercy inched across his attractive face. Of course, but you must be prepared to pay the consequences in full once I prove you wrong, Beta. His eyes darkened. I expect full reimbursement for all this trouble you and your daughter has been causing me. Benicio looked taken aback, eyes darting to Hestia, who refused to meet his gaze. He was positive that Hestia was telling the truth, but then why would the Alpha be so willing to prove his point if what she said was true? With a solemn face, he nods. Benicio was betting everything he had on the mere promise of Hestia's words. a promise that was so obviously untrue, but he chooses to be blind to. I sigh. I was just wasting my time here. I continue to stride out the door with Noah on my tail. My hand reached out to grab hold of the knob once more when... Alpha Crestfield. I flinch, reveling away from the door, and focused my gaze on Locksworth, who stared heatedly at me. His brooding dark gaze bore into me, piercing through every layer of my defenses. I felt vulnerable. My body lit up with caution as he addressed me. "I'd like to ask you to accompany us." My gaze swept through the crowd of confused faces before settling back to his awaiting one. For a split second, something flashes in her eyes, but I don't let it hold my interest. I looked to Noah and nodded in dismissal. If Locksworth wanted his privacy, I would respect it by telling my warriors to stay put. Landon did the same, bringing no one but Hestia, Sophie, and Benicio. All 8 of us made our way into the shrine. Noah and I trailed behind, not really having any part in this, but being spectators of the whole ordeal. The tension surrounding the 2 groups was thick, understandably so. The cave glowed with barely lit torches attached to the walls. The entrance was narrow and cold. I felt a chill run through me. A few minutes in, and we reached the goddess's pool. Beautiful, shining crystals grew around it, some hanging from the cave ceiling and others growing from the walls. The water was sparkling, clear and unearthly. It looked ethereal, more so with a sculpted marble figure of the moon goddess centered in the middle. Her hair was exquisitely long, a garland of flowers delicately carved above her head as a crown. Her thin arms were outstretched as though she was posed for an embrace. One hand held a posy of flowers, the other held a balance scale. A small crescent moon laid on one of the weight pans, the sun on the other. A perfect balance. It was serene. The only sound we could hear was the water dripping from the crystal above and dropping into the pool. "Well, there's no need to prolong this. Hestia, go on," my father said gruffly, motioning to the pool with his head. He looked annoyed, insistent on speeding the process up to prove Locksworth wrong. Pride was the most primal part of his being. An insult to his pride was as good as an insult to his existence. Hestia swallowed, looking at father nervously before staring after Locksworth. The longing and fear on her face matched my suspicions of her lie. Locksworth, without even glancing her way, walked forward, taking his place at the front of the pool, and swiped out a metallic pocket knife from his back pocket. Sliding the blade out, he wordlessly sliced his palm open and held it above the water. He squeezed his fist, no indication of pain on his face as his blood dripped from his hand and mixed into the water. Ever so slightly, he turned to face Hestia and silently told her with his eyes to do the same. As I watched the exchange, his eyes shifted to meet mine. I felt instant heat the moment our gazes locked. Every fiber in my body felt the caress of his gaze. The heat trailed down my face, my collarbone, my chest, my waist. Every dip and curve he had the chance to see, he took. Goosebumps rose from my skin. Attempting to stop myself from the slight shaking, I crossed my arms. It felt intoxicating, like I was being held captive by his gaze. For the sake of my sanity, I tore my gaze away and watched Hestia slowly make her way up. Taking hesitant steps forward, she kept turning back for reassurance. She looked beyond nervous. Her eyes darted to everyone when she finally looked at me. I stoned myself, face neutral and blank as she dropped her gaze to the floor. Landon had walked up to her. He handed her his own pocket knife, to which she took almost unwillingly. The reluctance was easy to spot. Just as Locksworth did, she sliced her palm, flinching at the sting before letting drops of her blood mix into the pool. Everyone watched in interest. At first, the blood just mixed in until it became clear. Then, as quick as it had disappeared, the water started bubbling. From the corner of my eyes, I could see Hestia watching with a tight expression on her face. Her hand flew to her slightly protruding stomach. As we all waited impatiently for the result, I almost let out a small gasp when the water turned a bright red. They weren't mates. I knew somehow deep down they weren't mates, but knowing that she lied about it was still a shock. Why would she claim to find her mate when she didn't, and she already has Landon? My eyes flew to Hestia, whose face was tinged red. She kept her eyes downcast to the floor as my father stood gaping at the pool. Landon himself looked furious, his eyebrows scrunched together as he glared at his wife. He balled his fists, his wolf surfacing as his eyes menacingly switched to black. "Hestia! How dare you lie!" he bellowed, his fists shaking at his sides. Hestia winced, cowering away as she trembled from Landon's raised voice. I tried to find it in myself to feel bad, but I couldn't. She brought this upon herself. Whatever reason she may have, declaring an alpha as her mate when he wasn't was not only damaging to her reputation, but to Locksworth's as well. If she had told anyone outside the pack that he was her mate, a punishment would surely be in order for deception and malice. I simply looked away and focused my gaze on Benicio. He, too, was shell-shocked. He just stared at the red water slowly dispersing back to its original state, like it was a lie he couldn't believe. When he regained his composure, he immediately sought after Locksworth. The unmistakable embarrassment strained his expression. He swallowed, instantly going over to him. "Alpha Locksworth, I am so terribly sorry. My daughter, I cannot." He stumbled on his words, still unable to accept that his daughter was lying. His wolf submitted, head low and snout touching the ground in the utmost belittling position, but Locksworth didn't seem to care, which, in all honesty, I found odd. I expected him to smugly respond or demand punishment, but he didn't. He remained silent, staring at the pool with mild interest when suddenly his gaze fell back onto me. "My apologies, Alpha Locksworth." "I'm sincerely Alpha Crestfield." Locksworth interrupted, completely disregarding my father. I looked at him with my arms still folded across my chest. Ignoring the slight butterflies I felt, I waited for him to continue. At this point, everyone had stopped talking and watched us in confusion. Locksworth stared, drilling his penetrating gaze into my eyes, and lifted his hand. Extending his palm toward me, his gaze softened by a fraction. "The test. I'd like to try it with you." My arms fell loosely to my sides as I stared at him. Was he serious? "That won't be necessary," I say, surprised to find my voice. Landon, Hestia, Benicio, everyone watched in stunned silence. They were rooted to their spots as I was, momentarily forgetting Hestia's deceit. We were all too focused on Locksworth's startling request, a request that shamelessly tugged at my heartstrings. "I'm certain we aren't mates, Alpha Locksworth." It wasn't a lie. I already had one, as much as I wish I didn't, standing right across from me. Landon looked dumbfounded, green eyes wide open and mouth gaping as he looked between Locksworth and I. Then slowly, once realization of what Locksworth's request implied, his expression morphed into anger. Anger to which I ignored. Locksworth's expression didn't change, not even with the growing hostility standing behind him. Waves of Landon's anger coursed through the very thin line of a bond we had. His wolf snarling in his mind at Locksworth, indirectly making a claim on me. His possessiveness was spiraling out of control. His wolf demanded to show everyone I was his, and Landon did nothing to try and hold him back. I knew that a few seconds from now, we'd have a shifted alpha attempting to murder another alpha. No one knew of his inner fury. He glared daggers at Locksworth, his fists whitening at the knuckles. His lips tugged up to showcase his canines threateningly. Hestia, who was now out of the initial shock, noticed Landon's jealous fit but said nothing. She merely stood by his side, watching with calculating eyes. Intrigue hit me in the face. I wondered why she wasn't blowing a fuse. Seeing her husband act like this would have angered her, no doubt, but at the same time Landon couldn't help it because of the mate bond. If I knew Hestia as well as I thought I did, she would have disregarded the mate bond excuse and still find her anger pointing at him. But none of that ensued. Strange enough, she was calm and collected, not like the emotional mess I expected her to be. My focus returned to Locksworth. The fierce look of determination in his stormy eyes set deep in his features. His hand was still outstretched to me, waiting, his large hand meaning to hold mine. Waves of satisfaction rumbled from my wolf at the thought. She purred, nudging her head against mine in encouragement. She wanted to feel it as much as I did, to feel his large hand covering mine, his long fingers intertwined with mine, his heat mixing with mine. She wanted everything. Quickly, I shut out my bond with Noah. I was getting careless with the kind of emotions reaching him. He most likely caught a sense of what I was thinking. Embarrassingly enough, I knew he would have made this a big deal if he had known the effect Locksworth had on me, the effects that even I was confused of. Their origin was so unclear and confusing, I knew that words probably wouldn't be enough to express them. It was like I was dying of thirst, and he was a tall glass of iced water just waiting to be chugged down. For the first time since meeting Locksworth, my wolf fell silent right after and retreated into the back of my mind. She left me to figure this out myself, just watching as she laid on her stomach with her head resting on her paws. "Wow. Do you already have a mate?" Locksworth asked, a slight edge to his voice. His clouded eyes darkened, cold but intense with scorching heat burning through me. I almost felt pressured under his scrutinizing gaze, a gaze that dared me to answer. The instinct that urged me to comfort him hit me. My fingers twitched to touch him, to soothe him of his tension. No words of threat were made, yet his gaze alone made me feel intimidated. This was who he is. The intimidatingly dangerous alpha that everyone swerved away from. He was the bloodlust alpha, Razel Locksworth. I began to fully understand the weight of his title and importance as the ranking number 1. Meeting him now, I understood just how he was able to control everyone around him like a pawn. His aura alone was enough to make the strongest of alphas to submit. He was made up of overwhelming power. Power he knew how to use fully. My lips parted, but no words came out. For a second, I was far too taken with the depth of his cold eyes to properly respond. But I was quick to catch myself. Shaking myself out of my daze, I pressed my lips in a thin line. Landon, from the corner of my eyes, stiffened at the question. If I answered yes, his wolf would be satisfied, but then his reputation would be tarnished. No one picks another over their true mate, but he did. It would surely cause problems for him. On the other hand, if I said no, his wolf would feel rejected, but his reputation would be saved. Sadly for him, I didn't take his feelings into consideration. No, I don't. The air went thick. Landon's shoulders slumped, a look of pain over his expression. He turned away, hands tight and clenched. I didn't miss the way my father glanced over to me in shock. My mother just kept her gaze at Hestia, who had her head down. Did they truly believe I'd still acknowledge him as my mate? After everything that happened, I couldn't care less about his reputation. He didn't deserve the title of my mate, and I wasn't going to give it to him. As far as I was concerned, he was just some alpha of a pack I had to be wary about. Not having an alliance with Nightwake meant we were more on enemies than acquaintances. The answer seemed to please Locksworth, his initial tense form relaxing as he once again held his hand up higher. "Please." It came out as a breathy whisper fanning over my skin. I inhaled sharply, unable to resist the small shivers raking up my spine. A pleasurable moan from my chest almost slipping if I hadn't caught myself. From the looks of everyone behind him, no one had heard what he said. Locksworth swallowed with the tip of his tongue darting out between his lips to wet them. His gaze dropped to mine as mine did to his. My heart pounded against my chest in anticipation. Anticipation for what? Then, without registering what I was doing, I instinctively slipped my hand in his. The perfect fit. Tingles, sparks, everything electrifying ran through me the moment his skin touched mine. I felt my breath hitch at the overload of emotions hitting me all at once. The warmth slowly spread through my body from his hand. It felt so right. So right that it was concerning. I almost swiped my hand back in surprise, but Locksworth's grip held me tight in place. He ran his thumb over my knuckles gently, gaze falling to our joined hands in what seemed like wonder. Wonder with a mix of awe. After a few seconds, he froze and almost immediately began to tug me toward the direction of the pool. He was rushing, seemingly afraid like I was going to disappear in thin air if I didn't do it right this instant. His steps were short but long, and I found myself almost stumbling behind him to match his pace. Noah slammed against our bond, practically screaming at me to let him in. He was sensing danger. I knew he was going to ask me what the hell I was doing, but honestly, I don't really know. My mind told me to pull away, but my body, soul, instincts told me to get closer, to have him closer. Fuck, these hormones need to stop. Once we reached the start of the pool, he let go of my hand. I instantly missed his warmth against mine, but I would never admit it to him. I watched Locksworth lift the same hand he drew blood from, and noticed it had already begun to start healing. He reopened the wound by squeezing his fist tight. Red drops of liquid spilled over his hand from the gaping wound. He looked unbothered, barely feeling the pain of sliced skin affect him. Dripping his bloody hand over the water, he watched as a few drops of his blood merged into the clearness of it. The dark red sowing into the pool slowly disappeared into nothingness. He looked at me expectantly, eyes holding nothing but urgency with a mix of caution. With one last sigh, I gave him a hard look, trying to brush aside my clear attraction to him. I was acting totally irrational. It was pointless to try. I knew it was. But I felt the need to do it. Frustration pent up inside me at the realization. It's not going to work, I tell him, but really I tell myself. Locksworth says nothing as he steps aside, giving me room to stand over the pool. He acts as if he didn't hear me. Trying to recollect my disarray of thoughts and pounding heart, I briskly walk past him. I brush past him. I stop myself from making a noise of surprise and continue on my way like it didn't faze me. Looking at the sculpted statue of the moon goddess, I breathed out and sliced my palm with one of my extended claws, the small line I drew down, skin turning red from the blood spilling forth. Noah looks at me weird, eyebrows pressing together as to say, "What the actual fuck?" and I shoot him a glare. I don't have a knife. I grumbled out in our bond before shutting it off again. It's not like I wake up this morning thinking, oh, hey, I should probably bring a knife because my sister lied about being Raisel's mate and pissed my dad off because he thinks Raisel is denying her. So he challenges him to go to the moon goddess's sacred pool to find out. It turns out to be a lie, and suddenly Raisel will ask me to try it with him. I raised my hand over the pool, watching as my blood inked into the clear water until it dissolved. I knew what the answer was, but a small part of me had that intangible hope that maybe, just maybe. But I was right. The clear water turned red, deflating any minuscule hope inside me. I covered up the disappointment, turning to look at Locksworth, whose eyes were heatedly pointed at the red liquid. He stared at the pool as if it had done him such wrongs. Like his life was thoroughly destroyed by the water in front of him. Like I said, I whispered silently, not mates. This time, I could do so little to hide my tone of dejection. I was sure if Noah didn't catch it, Landon certainly did. I felt his eyes cut cold to me, burning through my skin. When his persistent glaring finally left, I noticed him smirk in triumph toward Locksworth, who still didn't give him the time of day. I should have known it was impossible. Locksworth muttered lowly to himself. I felt a similar tinge of disappointment in his aura before he composed himself. His expression went stiff as he looked away from the pool. Now we were all surrounded by this uncomfortable silence. A silence I didn't want to be part of. I was already regretting accepting his request as a witness. It feels more and more like I'm digging myself into trouble, and trouble was exactly what Locksworth was. Clearing my throat, everyone's attention flew to me. I looked to Locksworth, who stared back with a troubled expression on his face. He looked puzzled. I've seen the results concerning Luna Walker. If you need me to clarify it with the Chancellor as a witness, don't hesitate to contact me. Nodding toward him, I swallowed, my gaze sweeping down his entirety one last time as I muster up all the remaining strength in my body to face him. The confidence I had earlier in Landon's office gone and wiped clean from my body. Alpha Locksworth. He stared, slowly nodding back with darkened eyes, his muscles tense with an ache to do something. His fingers twitched ever so slightly, but he balled his hands. Alpha Crestfield. He acknowledged. I looked toward his beta in silent goodbye. With Noah by my side, I cast Landon, my father, Hestia, and my mother a look before turning to leave. Walking closer and closer to the exit of the cave, my body felt heavier and heavier the more distance put between us. I resist the urge to meet the piercing gaze willing me to look at his gray, steely eyes because I know if I met them, even for a split second, I'd be entranced. So entranced, I doubt I could ever get out of it. Landon's POV. I couldn't help the smug look on my face as the water turned red. Pride and joy surged through me, knowing that Celine was no one else's but mine. My wolf puffed his chest out, growling out his approval at the turn of events. Our souls were intertwined with the red string of fate, woven by the moon goddess herself that no one could ever interfere with. Not even Razel Locksworth. Bloodlust Alpha be damned. I've seen the results concerning Luna Walker. If you need me to clarify it with the Chancellor as a witness, don't hesitate to contact me. Celine said, nodding toward him. Her eyes lingered on him far longer than I liked, a burst of jealousy fizzing in the depth of my chest. Alpha Locksworth, she whispered. He looked at her, his eyes soaked in her entirety, slowly nodding as if he just remembered to respond in that moment. Alpha Crestfield. Her eyes suddenly tore from him to seek out the man standing behind him to say goodbye. The Beta, Weston Creed. With one last look at Locksworth, her gaze suddenly fell upon me. But as quickly as she looked, she shifted her gaze to everyone else. She didn't spare a second longer for anyone before leaving. My wolf whimpered, pawing at the barrier as he watched his mate walk away. Since seeing her again, he was more insistent on making me do something to win her back, to make her mine. For the past 4 years, I didn't see her. I was living a tolerable life. Surely, when I felt the bond snap, I was shocked. Shocked, hurt, heartbroken, but at the same time, relieved. Relieved that I no longer had to worry about the lingering feelings I had for Celine when I was with her sister. I thought that with Celine gone, I had nothing to feel guilty about. That I didn't give half my heart to Hestia but the other half for Celine. After all, how can someone have half my heart if she's dead? I thought it was okay to think that way, all until Hestia got pregnant. When she got pregnant and found her mate, thus distancing herself, it opened my eyes. It made me realize that Selene was irreplaceable. That unlike Hestia, she was solely crafted for me. It was then when I realized the weight of what a mate was. Your mate wasn't just a destined partner. Your mate was something more. Your mate was half your life, your soul, your every living cell to make you who you are. A mate would never abandon you and choose someone else. A mate could never fall out of love. A mate was someone who could never love another the way they loved you. A mate that I never was for Celine. A mate I never gave her a chance to be. I know it's fucked up. I know it's morally wrong. I know I have no right. Believe me. I know. But after everything, I also know now that it was all a mistake. It was a mistake to choose Hestia. It was a mistake to reject her. A sudden weight pressed down on my chest. I felt the heavy chains of guilt, remorse, and regret weighing me down as I stood. Fucking great. This is all just fucking great, really. A flare of anger brewed inside me as I turned to the female carrying my pup. She stood behind her mother, hands shakily clutching onto her sleeves as she watched me with wide, fearful eyes. The spark of anger quickly turned to waves of fury. We are all talking when we get back. I mind-linked Hestia, her mother, and Beta Benicio. Their eyes snapped over to me. I caught a flash of worry in both of their eyes for their daughter. They knew the anger I felt right now would not cease until I had a word with her. Beta Benicio gave me a curt nod, but I could feel his tension. His eyes spoke words as he cast his daughter a look of pity before turning away. Now I had one more problem at hand. I looked over to Locksworth, who was still watching after the entrance of the cave from where Celine left. I flexed my jaw. I did not like the way he was looking after her like a man in love. His ridiculous request of trying the pool together had already put me in boiling water with my wolf. Clearing my throat, his gaze cut over to me. Immediately, the lightness in his eyes were replaced with an icy glare, focusing down on the woman who shielded herself away from his gaze. Alpha Locksworth, I sincerely apologize for Hestia's false accusation of you. I will personally handle the matter myself. Once again, I truly do apologize. She stepped out of line. I narrowed my gaze down at her before looking back to Locksworth. And I promise you, it will never happen again. Locksworth's hard gaze tightened with cynical amusement. He chuckled, shaking his head before narrowing his eyes. Beta Creed immediately stepped back, watching his alpha exert the most amount of power I've ever seen come from a lone wolf. Taking a step forward, Locksworth shoved both hands in his dress pants pockets and stood over me. His dark eyes never wavering as streams of his aggression depleted out of him and onto me. The urge to submit growing steadily, but I forced my body to strengthen myself. The alpha in me was stubborn to keep my ground strong. I don't need your promises, Walker. I flinched at his disrespect, forcing down the wolf inside me from lashing out. I know better than anyone that I can't take him. He would, without a doubt, beat me in power play. He was stronger, both in physical and mental states. He exudes in power, whereas I try to grow it. Alpha Locksworth was not a force to be reckoned with. He could easily end someone's life with the snap of his fingers. Just make sure I never have to see that woman again. That episode of hers in front of the Chancellor cost me, Walker. You're lucky one good thing came out of this. His eyes softened for the briefest moments before the darkness in them returned at full force. It would do you well to heed my advice. In fact, include her father, because believe me, the next time I see either one of their faces, I won't be so civil. He threw one last glare at Hestia and Beta Benicio before turning on his heel and striding out the cave. Beta Creed followed behind him, but I saw the small smirk on his face before turning. Fuming in my spot, I felt my fur bristle out and shake. The man was mocking me. He knew damn well I was holding myself back in order not to start a fight. Beta Benicio instantly came to my side, muttering apologies over and over, but I wasn't hearing it. When we get back, I want every one of you in my office. I grit out. No exceptions. They silently filtered out of the cave with me being the last person to leave. I watched them all go into our van, noting that Locksworth was already gone by the time we got here. Needless to say that the ride back home was pure hell for the amount of anger rolling off of me. Any wrong movements and the small restraint I had over my wolf would snap and involve the one who put me in the bad mood. When we arrived back at Territory, everyone knew to go to my office. I had mind-linked everyone not to disturb us and go on with their day, but I knew they sensed my inner anger. They all merely bowed their heads, not willing to look me in the eyes in fear of my anger being directed on them. Somebody explained to me exactly what the fuck Locksworth was talking about. What about the Chancellor? I stared down at Hestia and Beta Benicio. Hestia rolled her eyes, glaring down at the floor as her father stayed silent. Sophie, her mother, shakily spoke up. Alpha Landon, don't you think this is a little too harsh? Hestia. Little too harsh? I scoffed bitterly with eyes wide in disbelief. Your daughter, your Luna, my chosen mate, had publicly humiliated us. Me, the Alpha. Our pack. By claiming someone as her mate when he wasn't. By claiming Locksworth of all people. Tell me, what will the other packs think? What will our allies think? Do you believe them to be so kind-hearted as to overlook a scandal like this? A scandal involving the fucking bloodlust Alpha? Sophie cowered back, shaking as she forced her head to submit. Beta Benicio looked ready to pounce at me for yelling at his mate, his eyes switching back and forth from black to blue. The only thing holding him back was the fact I was his Alpha. I took a deep breath in, trying to calm myself when Beta Benicio spoke through clenched teeth. His form was rigid, almost too stiff to even breathe. Alpha, don't worry, we'll fix this. Fix? I laughed, throwing my head back. Fix how, Beta Benicio? You know what, don't even say a word. I know for a fact it'll just be utter bullshit. But do tell me exactly what the hell Locksworth was talking about. Exactly what the hell did Hestia do 3 weeks ago when she claimed to have found her mate? Beta Benicio looked down to his daughter before meeting my gaze with worry, all traces of anger quickly switching to fear. She and we went to the capital. Hestia was called for a meeting regarding her mate status, but then, his gaze cut to the ground, we saw Alpha Locksworth with the Chancellor. They were with other Alphas, Alpha Foster, Alpha Hales, and Alpha Monterey. Hestia, she just stopped talking and immediately ran up to him. She said they were mates. I believed her, of course, but Alpha Locksworth had no idea what she was talking about. He just kept denying it. He swallowed nervously, and so she begged for him to take her. On her knees, in front of all the Alphas, including the Chancellor. Said she'd be a good mate. Said she never would have gotten with you had she known it was him. My wolf clawed out at me, demanding me of punishing both of them right here, right now. They hid such an important detail of her stumbling upon her mate. Hestia had not only humiliated our pack, but she made it seem as though I forced her into forming a bond with me, begging Locksworth to accept her, to boast. I looked to Hestia, who had a scowl on her face at her father's words. Though her face was full of contempt, I could feel the lingering fear underneath her skin. Have you no shame? You, my Luna, the Luna of the pack. You are carrying my child and the future Alpha. Does that mean anything to you? You begged on your knees for someone who isn't your mate? Do you have anything to say for yourself? I asked her, digging my nails into my skin as she looked up. Hestia narrowed her eyes at me, her dark blues against my greens. No? I laughed, stalking toward her in anger. She is a fool if she thinks I'll let this go. She stepped back, the tough facade she held cracking as she felt my energy surging forward. Tell me why you lied, why you told everyone, even your father, that Locksworth was your mate. Hestia flinched at my alpha command. Although she held the title of Luna, she wasn't born to be one. She didn't have the power to resist my command over her. So, reluctantly, she answered, to get away from you. If I had him, no one would dare challenge me. No one would even think of objecting our separation if he was my mate. He'd take care of me for the rest of my life. I wanted to get away from all this responsibility. She hissed out. I had enough. I don't want this baby. I don't want the damned Luna title. It's too much work. I never asked for this, Landon. I never asked for all this extra baggage that came with being with you. Ever since you found out Celine was your mate, you acted different. You aren't as focused on me anymore. You'd always get this faraway look on your face. She huffed out, eyes wild with frustration. They turned glassy as she stared at me with sadness. But don't you dare act so just. Ever since Celine came back, all you've ever been thinking about was her. Too bad she doesn't want you, huh? There'd be no way she ever would, not when you abandoned her. You rejected her for me, Landon. Own up to it. She spat. I felt a sharp sting pierce into my chest from her words. She was right. I know she was. In anger, I balled my fists, feeling unorthodox hatred fill me as I stared at the woman in front of me. You ignored her calls that day of the attack, like all of us. You wanted her to die. You did. Don't you dare lie. I only wanted her out of the picture because she threatened my future with you. You wanted her gone because you felt yourself being torn apart. You knew perfectly well what was happening to her, but you chose to do nothing. You wanted her gone just like all of us. You wanted the easy way out. She laughed humorlessly as she rubbed her face with vigor. No, you wanted her gone more than any of us. Too fucking bad she lived. And now that she shows up back from the dead, you act like some loved-up pup. Admit it. You were glad that I found my mate the moment you saw her again. You were glad because you knew that meeting we had today would be your chance to start over with her. You didn't even protest when we came up with the idea. You didn't mind getting with her in exchange with me getting Locksworth. You were practically jumping at the thought, regardless of who my mate was, that you could get me off your hands. You knew if I had my mate, I could go with him and you could go with her. That there wouldn't be any loose ties. I grit down on my teeth. Again, she was right. I did want Celine dead. I wanted her dead because of what she made me feel, what the bond made me feel. But then she came back. The initial betrayal I felt when Hestia found her mate instantly disappeared. I was glad Hestia found her mate because that meant a chance for me. It meant I could ease my way back into Celine's life. She would definitely give me the chance. She may be stubborn now, but I know she wants a mate. And I'm the only mate she has. She would still want me, no matter the past. You're right, I won't deny that. But how dare you say you didn't know what baggage would come from being with me? I told you the moment we started seeing each other, I was an alpha first, not a lover. And what? Did you really think a pretty face and sweet words would be enough to make Locksworth accept you? Did you think he'd take you in, allow you to claim him as yours falsely, and leave it at that? That he wouldn't bring you to the scared pool to prove to everyone the liar you are? That he'd take you in as his mate when you aren't? Hestia smirked, despite the shaking of her body with her tears spilling from her eyes. Worked for you, didn't it? It took everything inside me not to lunge at her. The only thing holding me back was the fact that she had my pup. The moment it's born, I would punish her accordingly. I'd banish her, let the Dixons decide if they wanted to follow her out or not, but I wouldn't leave my child with her. I'd take my child and raise him or her with Celine. I would make her eat her words and more. The ultimate betrayal of the woman I loved. Get out, all of you. Hestia glared, her voice shaking. Her wolf whimpered within her, eyes shifting fearfully between Hestia and I. Wiping her tears away, she croaked out, "Gladly." I watched as they all quickly filed out. I could hear distinct yelling outside the moment the door locked. Beta Benicio was yelling at Hestia, to which Hestia yelled back incoherently. The only words I could make out was, "How could you have done this?" coming from Benicio's end. I didn't care anymore. I was going to get what was mine. No matter what it took, I would get Celine back. We were mates after all. There was no other ending but that for us. Celine. So. I looked at Noah, who sat opposite of me in the van. With my arms folded and my legs crossed, I raised a brow at him. Noah pressed his lips together, nodding awkwardly as he twiddled with his thumbs. "You and Locksworth, huh?" He whistled, fanning himself as he puffed out his cheeks. That sexual tension was just damn. Is it possible for someone to get pregnant from that? 'Cause if it is, I'm probably on the way. Gotta break the news to Melia, though. We'll be expecting our Selene and Razel bun to come out of my oven soon. Gonna pop it right out. I almost choked. What? Noah rolled his eyes, leaning against his seat with an amused expression on his face. His whole body oozed off playfulness, the kind of playfulness that made my wolf cover her ears with her paws. You two weren't just undressing each other with your eyes, you were practically dry humping. My mouth hung open and closed like a gaping fish. I didn't know how to respond. What he said was completely and utterly wrong. But was it really? Was what my annoying conscience said in the back of my mind. You, I said, pointing a menacing finger at him, are being ridiculous. Noah hummed with a disbelieving look on his face. He bent his elbow against the car door, resting his chin on his knuckles, and sighed exasperatedly. What's ridiculous is the amount of sexual frustration oozing off of you right now. He smirked, seeing my face slowly flush. It's off the charts. I bet I could roast marshmallows over your face from how much heat you're giving out right now. He rubbed his hands together for dramatic effect. Shut up. I grit out, hating that my thoughts were going haywire because of the man I was always told to stray away from. The man who had somehow managed to absorb my thoughts from the moment I laid my eyes on him. I thought about those captivating gray eyes searching for something, that husky voice seducing me into falling in his darkness, his soft touch igniting every cell in my body, his scent encasing me in a blanket of pure frenzy for more. I clenched my legs together as his face surfaced through my mind, that chiseled, annoyingly handsome face. Noah stilled hearing his name, the air thick with the heavy strain of my next few words. We're going to the capital. I want you to go back to the pack and take care of everything for a few days. My gaze hardened as I looked out the window, the images of trees and the blue sky flashing by as we drove, the bittersweet silence hanging over us until I finished, soothing and calm. I'm going to be a little busy with the interrogation. Understood, Alpha. He paused. Oh. I glanced over to him from the corner of my eyes. A slow, deathly smile inches across his face. Do have fun. I mirrored his expression. Smiling sweetly, I tilt my head to the side. I most definitely will. There was no point in making the two rogues wait. Soon, I tell myself, soon I'll get to see those faces twist into unimaginable pain, pain that wouldn't only be in the bounds of physical, but the mental and emotional pain all the like. The kind of pain they bestowed upon me 4 years ago, the pain that still haunts me to this day. I played with the greyhound ring I was wearing, rolling it between my thumb and pointer finger. The green glimmered against the lighting. Everything I worked hard for led to this. Just to let you know, your toys are in the back. I raised a brow at him. Since when did he put it in the van? Noah shrugged, folding his arms across his chest before letting out a deep chuckle. Call it beta intuition or just Celine intuition, but I had a feeling today was doomsday for them. Just a hunch, a very accurate hunch. I say nothing as my smile set into place. Oh, Noah, you don't know how happy you just made me from those 6 words. Pulling out my phone, I punched in Chancellor William's private number and held the phone to my ear. After the second ring, he answered. I take it that you're coming to interrogate them today? He asks into the phone. No greeting, no pleasantries, just straight to the point. I could almost hear the smile in his voice. Yes, I've brought some things with me, if you don't mind. He laughed, his deep voice echoing against my ear. I could see Noah smiling shamelessly in glee. He was genuinely proud of himself for bringing the toys. The twinkle in his eyes waiting for a praise from me said so. Oh no, of course not. I wouldn't get in the way of a lady's essentials. He paused. And, oh, my apologies, Celine. I have an alpha guest over tonight. I hope you don't mind it. I know how you are with alphas. You're more than welcome to come over still if you wish, or you can come tomorrow. No, it won't be a problem. I'll spend all of my time at the Capitol in the interrogation room anyway. No worries from my end. I doubt I'll sense anything more than a scent from this guest of yours. Then that's fine. I'll alert the guards to allow you in. Will your beta be joining you? I sigh, sneaking a glance at Noah, whose mood seemed a little dampened at the question. No, not today. It'll just be me. I see. This time, he sighed. He's going to miss quite the show. Indeed he is. Noah grumbled lowly. My lips tugged up, but I stopped myself. It seems Williams also caught his little input because he chuckled softly. I truly do like this beta of yours. He's un-beta-like, I must say. It's honestly refreshing. I'd like to talk more, but it would seem my guest is not in the best of moods right now. I'll have to prepare for the worst when he arrives. My eyebrows scrunched together in curiosity. If you don't mind me asking, who? Enjoy your stay here, Celine. And then he hung up. Pulling the phone from my ear, I looked at it weirdly before turning my gaze to Noah. He shrugged, confusion etching on his face before he smirks. So about that sexual tension. I need you to make sure my schedule is clear for the next 2 days. Maybe 3, but I'll let you know if I need more time. Other than that, make sure no one slacks training. I want everyone not on border duty out in that field at 6 a.m. sharp. That rogue in the lower cells, add more silver chains. Tighten up security and add more warriors at the back borders. I don't want Zenron seeing any opportunities, especially when I'm away. Any messages from other packs go directly to me. Noah nodded, passing me the duffel bag of goodies. The warriors surrounding us bowed, bidding me a safe stay before getting back in the van after dismissing them. The large mansion looming over me filled me with memories of when I first started training for being an alpha. Memories of my first meeting with the Chancellor to changing my last name to Crestfield. Everything. Noah stared at me quietly before letting his eyes drift to the Capitol mansion. His expression turned grim. Shame Isaac has to miss this. I'm sure he would have wanted to get a few licks in before you do anything too damaging. I smiled at the thought of Isaac. I was sure he was having fun taking his aggression out on the fresh meat. Though he was far too aggressive when training, his lessons are the best you can get. It was better knowing the reality of the harsh world of wolves than to idly stay inside, completely oblivious and unprepared for attacks. He didn't do easy training. It wasn't his style. I don't intend on doing much physical pain, well, at least not yet. I smirked, casting him a side glance. I was thinking of waiting it out for Isaac. I'm sure he'd appreciate the little gift. Noah quirked a brow with interest. Shifting his weight on his right leg, he turned his body to face me. Not physical, huh? So I'm guessing you're planning on using the good old mind break method. I nodded. Well, that sounds morbidly fun. Don't break them too much. You're still going to need them. I don't intend to. I just want to give them a little taste is all. Noah smirked, holding my gaze before turning away with the shake of his head. Did I ever tell you you'd make one good boogeyman monster? I think earning the title Hellhound is self-explanatory. With one last smile, we nuzzled heads, and I watched him get in the van. Once they were out of sight, I walked up the patio steps of the mansion and rang the doorbell. Not a second went by when one of Williams's headmaids opened the door. She kept her eyes low, bowing with her hands clasped together at her stomach. Wearing a traditional black housekeeping uniform that reached her ankles, she smiled softly. Alpha Crestfield, it's a pleasure to see you again. Chancellor Williams has informed me of your purpose for today's visit. Your room has been set up for your use. Please allow me to accompany you to the interrogation chambers. I nodded silently. She led me through the hallways I grew accustomed to seeing. Having frequent visits here for pack affairs, social dinners with his family, and occasional visits with Meredith, I learned the pathways of the mansion by heart. Walking at the pace the head maid, Opal, was leading, we walked down the secret passageways of the mansion. I remembered the first time I set foot in this place. I had serious Dracula vibes coming from here. Like any horror movie, the interrogation chambers were located at the lowest levels, much like the one I had in Greyhound territory. We walked down the dim, cobblestone stairs only lit up by torches hanging at the ceiling. The walls were moist, water dripping down the ceilings and onto the floor. Small puddles of water were everywhere. The first few cells we walked by were empty. It took us a good few feet down the chamber room to reach the isolation area, the place the rogues were being kept at. Opal turned to me, a smile on her face as she bowed once again. They're strapped in silver chains on the chairs. They haven't been eating anything the prison guards have given them, so they're a little malnourished. Chancellor Williams bids you good luck. Her eyes met mine for a brief moment. I could see the mischief hidden in her gaze, as well as a good time. And then, without another word, she turns on her heel and walks past me. Back to the direction we came from, the sound of her heels clicking against the stone, getting further and further away, was all I heard. Grasping the handles of the duffel bag tightly in my hand, I breathed in. My wolf growled out in amusement, claws extending and canines protruding past her lips. Her eyes sought after the thick metal door in front of us. She could smell them. The thick scent of the rogues, Theo and Val. I was already beginning to feel my self-control slip away, occasional snarls leaving past my lips unintentionally with my eyes flickering to her black gaze. Exhaling, I walked toward the door, placed my palm around the metal knob and pulled. A smile stretched across my face at the sight that greeted me. Well, isn't this just delightful? I hummed to myself, ignoring the muffled screams and growls of hatred being directed toward me. Walking around Theo, who was strapped into a metal chair with her wrists and ankles bound with silver, I looked on to Curly Head. Or should I say Val? Chancellor Williams truly did leave them to me. They weren't touched. From what I can see, the only damage done was their refusal to eat. They looked terrible. They looked a little skinny, eyes sunk in, with bags under them. They also probably weren't sleeping. I doubt they could, with those gags in their mouths. Still humming a soft tune, I walked over to the metal table Chancellor Williams so gracefully left for me. It was empty, of course. He knew I liked to use my own things. Dropping the duffel bag on the table, I unzipped it and began taking everything out slowly. I saw the way Theo and Val looked at me in both curiosity and fear. I guess they didn't recognize me yet. You know, this isn't how I envisioned we'd all meet again, I say, putting down the 2 flasks of wolfsbane on the counter. I rummaged deeper into the bag and let out a small aha when I found the melted silver I specifically ordered for them. Lifting my eyes to the 2 rogues who stared at me in pure hatred, I couldn't help the smile on my face. I thought I'd have you at my territory. I sighed, lifting up the silver claws attached onto a glove. Usually it was just metal, but I had Noah coat them in silver for special use. I didn't miss the way Theo's eyes widened. Seems like my plan's already working. Of course, these toys of mine weren't going to be used today. It was all about mental pain for now. Having them scared out of their wits before anything truly began was the first stage. Unlike the other rogues I dealt with, I wanted to take my time, to truly break them from inside out. Starting with their bodies would have been way too merciful. I have a lot more toys there. Some are a secret only rogues like you find out about. That's why no one knows about them. The only ones who find out what they are end up dead. I smiled at Val, who narrowed his eyes at me like a hawk. Taking out a silver choker that tightens when resistance is indicated after being activated, I spun it around my finger, a mocking grin full-blown over my face. And they call me heartless. I couldn't help but taunt them with the same words I heard them say. Fio flinched, slowly realizing who I was from my words. Her eyes grew frantic, disbelief and fear basking in her pretty little marble eyes. I heard Zeneron abandoned you two. Still not finished with setting the table with my gadgets, I walked toward them. My heels clicked and echoed in the room. Their muffled voices ceased, their shock and surprise paralyzing them. Ain't that a tragedy? I laughed sardonically, clutching onto my stomach. With a pleased smile on my face, I leaned over Fio and pulled out the gag from her mouth. She coughed, saliva dripping down her lips as she glared at me. You fucking whore! She screamed, thrashing out in her seat. I tsked at her, shaking my head in disapproval as I watched her skin mar in burns. Soon the smell of burning skin began to fill the room. I wrinkled my nose in distaste. The more she moved against the restraints, the more burns she got around her wrists. Oh, sweetheart, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Silver doesn't heal that quickly. I give her a look. Now, I don't want to hurt you, I shrugged. Not yet. I have a few questions, you see. Pulling the chair from the metal table, I scraped the legs against the ground and watched her cringe at the sound. Setting it right in front of her, I took a seat. What does Zeneron want from Nightwake? Fio stopped moving. Her skin paled around her face. Darting her gaze to Val, who was right behind me, she swallowed. I don't know what you're... Oh, please, if Draxon didn't yap like those typical movie villains, I wouldn't have heard you. But alas, I leaned toward her face, grasping her oily locks in my hand and tightened my hold. She screeched out in pain as I tugged her scalp toward me. He did. I let go of her hair. She moved away, pressing her back against the chair to get as much distance from me as possible. Val was growling, moving so frantically in his seat that I just had to turn over my shoulder. My eyes widened in realization. He was mid-shifting, but the silver around him restrained him from getting out. His wolf bared his canines at me, and slowly I smiled. Oh, this just gets better and better. I pushed my seat back, stepping away from Fio and focused on Val instead. I walked toward him like a predator, letting my eyes take in his vital points and weaknesses. He was a strong wolf, physically. Mentally, I'm not so sure. Fio screamed, pushing herself harder against her seat when she realized what I was doing. Oh my, I say, a laugh pulling from my lips. I point a finger at Val before turning on my heel to point at her with a look of astonishment. You two are mates. Now that's adorable. I walked around Val and stood behind him. Wrapping my arms around his neck, I smirked, seeing Fio rage in jealousy from her mate being touched. Her wolf was peeking out, skin slowly overcome with fur. But also, I trailed my finger down his cheek, very convenient. Val hissed in disgust, trying to move away from my touch, but I held him here. My hands forced his head still. My wolf hated touching another male, but she knew this was part of the interrogation process. She hated any male's touch, including Landon's. All except. I shook my head, tearing my focus away from that man, and looked at Fio. My smirk was still in place as I tauntingly trailed my hands over his chest. I could feel his breathing quicken, clearly frazzled by the sudden invasion of his personal space. You bitch! Fio screamed, tears beginning to pour down her face as she went still in her chair. I pout, resting my chin at the crown on Val's head. I guess the mate bond really does this kind of stuff to you, especially when you're deeply involved. I prefer the term wolf, but I guess that works too. I pull away from Val and lean against the table. I have to hand it to you. He's quite the eye candy. Goddess blessed you with this one. I say, looking over to Val in my best I want to jump his bones look. Mind you that this is coming from a certified virgin. Goddess knows I look ridiculous, but I pretend I'm seeing someone else completely different. Someone who had gray eyes instead of his mucky brown ones. Even when I'm trying to mentally break people, I'm still thinking of him. It would be a shame if someone were to take him. Theo's cold gaze snapped to me as she narrowed her eyes into slits. I'm sure you heard. I'm mateless, and oh, is it so lonely. I crave lots of attention. I say with a nod. I begin to walk toward her again. My steps are deliberately slow as I lean close to her face. Affection, hugs, kisses. I smirk, twisting a lock of her hair around my finger. Sex. And that's when she tried to bite me. I pull away before she could even get close enough to do it. With my chuckles echoing in the room, I head to the bag and pull out my own customary muzzle that attaches to the inside of her jaw. Her eyes widen as she begins to dig her heels against the floor. All her attempts of trying to move away are futile. The chairs are bolted into the ground. Even with werewolf strength, she wouldn't be able to move it. Razel. 3 weeks prior. You're my mate. I tore my attention from Chancellor Williams, who was informing me of the latest rogue sightings, to the blonde striding toward us. Walking with a confident bounce in her steps, I was almost surprised to see the underlying nervousness and fear under her poised exterior. Dressed in a vibrant yellow sundress, with her hair tied up in a high ponytail, she stopped right in front of Williams and I. It took me a moment to realize that this woman was of Luna status, not because of her aura, but because of the mark on her neck. An alpha had a marking larger than an average wolf's. It took up almost the whole side of his partner's neck, depending on how deep he marked her. Even with her seemingly bold and assertive attitude, her presence wasn't much to dwell on. She didn't possess that spark that would have blatantly announced her a Luna just from first glance. If it wasn't for the mark, I probably wouldn't have noticed. I would have assumed she was just another she-wolf. I guess she didn't have proper training as Luna, or that she was newly given the position. No alpha female would have such little presence if that wasn't the case. The man jogging to catch up from behind her was obviously the beta. He was a tall, burly fellow with muscles rivaling most betas of the current packs. My own being an exception, of course. There'd be no way I'd chosen Weston Creed to be my beta had he been of average standard. Best friend or not. Shifting my weight to my right foot, I dropped the hand I was gesturing with to my side and cocked a brow. My eyes traveled down and settled to the skin of her neck once again. The obvious inking of her flesh and 2 puncture wounds the size of canines told me and everyone else around us that she was mated and claimed. What kind of nonsense is this woman spouting? Maybe the alpha she was currently involved with chose her because he didn't find his mate. The alpha will surely find himself some trouble now that she found her mate, and he's another alpha. The 5 of us stood here in silence. 4 of the men here were all alphas excluding Williams, and 3 out of 4 of them were currently mateless. Well, both of them were. I was permanently mateless. Alpha Foster and I were not part of the candidates. I look over to Alpha Hales and Alpha Monterey, both of their expressions confused and unsure before turning to each other. I buried my hands in my pockets and turned my body to the direction of the other men to see just who the hell this woman was talking to. My wolf was already irked for her interruption, but out of respect for the alpha mate of this woman, I restrained my growls. Unlike other alphas I've come across, I could somewhat tolerate them. Razel. My head whipped in her direction. The growl I've been meaning to restrain slipping and cutting her off immediately. Her eyes widened, and the fear she tried concealing instantaneously began to roll off of her. Not that my wolf nor I necessarily cared. My wolf hated the woman calling us so carelessly without the proper title. She had no right to. Hell, no one called me by my first name. Not even my own pack, regardless of the tradition. My body tightened with my fists clenched at my sides. The anger boiling inside me only growing the more she dared to stare at me in a daze. "Who are you?" I asked a lot more harsher than I intended. She looked taken aback, like she didn't expect me to respond like that. As if she expected something completely different. Did this woman not know proper etiquette? Did her Luna instincts not warn her off? To call upon an alpha she wasn't familiar with, without a title and using their first name was disrespectful. Not to mention completely fucking stupid. I was sure by now everyone knew of my bad temper. I narrowed my gaze at the girl in front of me. It was common sense. I'm Hestia W. Dixon of Nightwake. She blubbered quietly. Her head tipped down in submission, which in turn made me frown. A weak-willed Luna served as a liability, same as a weak-willed alpha. Both partners had to be strong not only physically but also mentally to uphold their positions and pack status. In all honesty, sometimes mental strength was much more important than the physical. What good would physical strength do if not utilized correctly? You could be the strongest in the world, but it would all mount to nothing if you couldn't lead and strategize a pack. It would still apply even if you were the weakest person in the world. If you could outsmart your opponent, what good would their muscles do? Though physical strength is still a very good attribute to have, a Luna was meant to help, strengthen, and better a pack. They weren't there simply for decoration and to look pretty. The emotional bit was a package deal. The Luna and Alpha served to maintain each other's condition, emotional included. Without a Luna, the pack could never function. Then again, I am a different case compared to other alphas. An alpha not blessed with a mate can't exactly need one to begin with. I'm your mate. The woman, who I momentarily forgot was still standing there, said. The wolf inside me growled, red eyes glowing brilliantly in the cage I was keeping him in. The fury I felt for the woman falsely claiming to be my mate when I don't have one only added to the bitterness of my lonely reality. It was like having salt rubbed into your freshly opened wound and then soaked with a gallon of alcohol before being pressed down on with shards of broken glass. She was testing my nerves. I'd advise you to refrain from making any more foolish jokes, Luna Walker. She flinched, hearing the name she held but didn't use when introducing herself to me. Nightwake was a pack I heard of, the pack that had failed to aid an ally, Duskfall, during a rogue attack. The very same pack that had fallen by 2 in the ranks. Alpha Landon Walker and his Luna, Hestia Walker, led it. A slight frown etched on my face, but I quickly removed it. I didn't know the Alpha personally, but I doubt he'd approve of what his Luna was doing. I don't know what you're talking about, Alpha Locksworth. You're my mate. She walked closer to me, reaching out to lay a hand on my bicep. I almost cringe away, revolted in her touch, meaning to seduce me. It was downright degrading for her to even try. Did she think I was weak enough to succumb to her advances? This wasn't the first time women shamelessly threw themselves at me, and each time I would deflect them. She was no exception. Hell, I had more reason to reject her, seeing as she's claimed and mated to a fellow alpha. I had no interest in the act of self-indulgence, nor did I want to give any of them a reason in thinking they could form some type of relationship with me. My concern and only concern is my pack. Sex was just a trivial thing I could live without. I've been doing so for years, and I had no plans on changing anything now. I hastily pull back from her, my wolf beginning to surface out, but the interference of Williams prevented me from going berserk. Alpha Locksworth, calm down. Rein in your wolf, and we will solve this matter peacefully. He tried to reason. He knew not to touch me. Anyone who would try would surely be losing an arm that very same second. Alpha Foster, Hales, and Monterey exchanged looks with one another before returning their gazes back to Hestia in shock. I am warning you, Luna. You are treading on very thin ice. Any more senseless remarks from you, and I won't hesitate to show you your place. My voice was deeper than usual, my wolf already taking half of the control from me. He was hell-bent on showing her that her thoughtless claims wasn't something that could be overseen. He found it insulting, humiliating, disgraceful, and the list goes on. Her claim on me was also seen as a threat. By claiming me, she was also claiming the title as my alpha female. Even without having one, I felt a need to defend it. The primal part of me urged me to. But you're my mate. She whimpered out, tears beginning to spill down her cheeks. I roll my eyes. Did she believe I was one to fall weak to tears? I see tears almost every day in my life at the torture chambers. Grown-ass men, crying and begging for their lives. as if I couldn't handle the sight of a mere female crying, a conniving one at that. I've seen dead rogues with acting skills better than that. I see perfectly well through her little act, but it would seem that my associates couldn't. I sensed their emotions of pity being directed toward her. Pity that basically said they believed her. Chancellor Williams was not part of the bunch. I was certain he saw through her as well. Suddenly, Hestia gets down on her knees, clutching onto my legs with her arms. Her hold around me is tight, almost suffocating like a leech. I'm tempted to just walk away and let her fall on her face, but the beta behind her makes his move. He glares down at me, wolf taking over, with his body all tense from anger. My wolf did not like this one bit. He saw a challenge that was just begging to be taken up. I have to remind myself, Chancellor Williams will not be happy. Though I don't answer to anyone, I do respect the man. Hestia, get up. This is not fitting for you. He ushers, trying to grab her arm from around my legs, but she nudges away from his grasp. I feel a vein pop from my temple, my frustration already blackening out all my logical thinking. It takes her 1 second before she looks back up to me. Please, darling. I can be a good mate. I wouldn't have been with Landon had I known you were here all along. We can make this work, please. Please give us a chance. She begged, the desperation clear in her tone. Although her acting was terrible, I knew her desperation to be my mate was true. For whatever reason, she was dead set on becoming mine. Some other mateless alphas might have taken the bait, but I know better than that. The moon goddess could hold a serious grudge. I would know. Alpha Locksworth is your mate? The beta asked calmly. For a moment, the flash of anger turned to interest, intrigue, and most noticeably fear. Looking at the two now, I could tell they were related. They both had similar facial structures, and the overprotectiveness of the beta proved to make the point. Beta Dixon looked at me in complete shock before his gaze traveled back to Hestia in silent question. With the slight nod of her head, his expression morphed into anger once more. He grit down on his teeth, his jaw clenching tightly before he dared to narrow his gaze on me. "You're my daughter's mate," he stated, leaving no room for argument. "Funny. Your daughter is lying," I retort, not bothering to sugarcoat anything. I don't have the time, energy, nor do I have the will to play make-believe with the girl. She can say all she wants, but in the end of the day, I know damn well she isn't my mate. I was never supposed to have one. And the sparks, tingles, or whatever the fuck the mate bond comes with was most certainly not happening between us. If it wasn't pure revulsion I felt for her, it would be growing distaste. She would never lie. Not about mates. You can't just reject her. Silence. Beta Dixon's mouth shut up, his eyes widening from his involuntary compliance to my order. The panic setting deep inside him grew immensely with the fear for his daughter. I look over to Chancellor Williams, who has a frown etched on his face. He looked at the beta and his daughter before shifting his gaze at me. I ignored the look he was giving me, the look that said to take this somewhere private. But I wasn't having that. I was going to set the record straight in front of everyone. I didn't need some of these alphas thinking I abandoned my mate. It wouldn't do well for publicity. Your daughter is not my mate. She knows that. I don't understand why she would bother lie about it when she already has a mate, but I don't exactly care much to begin with. My gaze narrowed at the bump under her dress. "I'm sure you're not going to claim me the father as well?" Her face reddened, her hand instinctively going to her stomach as she flushed in embarrassment. My wolf snorted, whipping his tail back and forth in aggravation. His eyes scanned her once, before dismissively huffing out his disdain. Pressing my lips together in a hard line, I look over to the other men who were watching the exchange silently. They kept their gazes away from her and solely focused on what I was about to say. "I believe we're done here. Shall we?" They all gave each other a brief look but nodded, straightening up and clearing their throats from the awkwardness growing around us. Yes. We shall," muttered Monterey as he loosened the tie around his neck. Williams gave me a nod and began to lead the men forward, walking by the woman who was still on her knees in front of me. She had long let her hold of me go when I made the comment of pinning me as the baby's father. Turning to the beta who was struggling to open his mouth, I narrowed my eyes down at him. He flinched, feeling the hostility, and stopped his fruitless struggling against my order. If I could, I would rather leave him like this forever. But I don't intend on making pointless trouble with Nightwake. That's just more work than necessary. Of course, if they start it, I won't have a problem ending it. I could use the Luna's false claims as evidence of malice and just get right onto it. But surprisingly, my wolf told me not to. He was stubborn on reining in his anger. He wanted me to wait. I don't know what the hell that means, but it would seem like something is supposed to happen with the Nightwake pack. Whether it had something to do with the Alpha or the Luna, there was no doubt in my mind it was something big. So instead, I simply glanced one last time toward the two before turning on my heel and following the men out. Release. The sound of the beta gasping out in harbored breaths was the last thing I heard before we entered the conference room. Present. Williams, it's Locksworth. Yes, I'll be staying at the Capitol for a week or so, depending on how long it takes. Of course. No, Beta Creed is not attending. It'll just be me. My wolf, he needs it. Yes, okay. My gaze swept to the door when 3 knocks bounced into the room. Weston stood behind it, his presence made known to me through our blood oath. Come in. I mind-linked. Not a second later, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. His gaze darted around my office to see if anyone was here, before landing on me. Tightening my grip on the phone, I forced my eyes to look back at the paperwork spread across my desk. I'll be seeing you. Pulling the phone from my ear, I place it on the table and stare at Weston expectantly. The look on his face was enough to let me know what this was about. Alpha, the pests are still sending requests for a meeting. My jaw ticked in annoyance. I sigh, pushing myself back on my chair. The woman and her father had been sending me meeting requests for the past 3 weeks now. Their stubbornness and persistence is truly maddening. Rejection after rejection, the requests keep coming until a good pile was left on Weston's desk. The woman is desperate enough to cling on to me after I so flatly rejected her advances. There could only be a handful of reasons why she's trying so hard. Power, authority, lust, protection. None of which interest me. I'm getting tired of this, I grumbled under my breath. Pushing myself off my chair, I tugged on my suit cuffs before running my hand through my hair. We're going to Nightwake territory. Weston nodded, already calling for our vehicles to be brought out for us through MindLink. My wolf perked up, lifting its head from its paws, and wagged its tail. His heavy pants came steadily, determination set in his red eyes. I scrunched my eyebrows together. What in fuck's name was he so excited for? I sincerely hope he didn't think we were going there for a massacre or something. As much as the idea of putting the beta in his place was enticing, I couldn't just waltz in there and threaten the Alpha. That would be so unethical. But did I really care all that much about ethics? Not really, I suppose. Understood, Alpha. Weston turned on his heel and pulled the door open. Striding out, the warriors posted outside simultaneously bowed their heads in submission. None raised their heads until we walked by and left them all behind. Every step I got closer and closer outside, I felt this growing need gnawing from inside me. There was this weird sensation bursting from my chest. Excitement, anxiety, desperation, everything coming from my wolf. His internal struggle clouding my own judgment. With a frustrated sigh, Weston slides open the SUV door. I get in, feeling the seat dip when I press my weight on it. I don't say it out loud, but I know for a fact that whatever direction this meeting will take, it'll be for the worse. Do you think she's doing it for the clout? I raise a brow at Weston. Already 40 minutes in the car ride, and all he's been doing was trying to educate me about the art of teenage slang. I breathe out through my nose and lean against my seat. My head falls to the headrest of the cushion. If what you're asking me is if I believe she's doing this for the sake of ranking, then yes. Yes and no. The ranking is a bonus. She's doing this for a completely different reason. My thoughts went back to Hestia. I felt myself get angry. Truthfully speaking, I've never been this angry by someone trying to lay claim on me before. Granted, no she-wolf was ever stupid enough to do it more than once, but the ones that wanted to form a relationship with me never brought out such intense dislike from my wolf. This situation felt entirely different, as if I had someone to save myself for. Stupid as it sounds. The exact reason I'm not so sure of. Weston nodded, looking out the window with a slight frown on his face. He chewed on his gums in thought before opening his mouth. The moon goddess sure does have it out for you, huh? He glances over me, but quickly averts his gaze, adding salt to the wounds by throwing these women at you. She's a vicious thing. A vicious thing my ancestors shouldn't have fucked around with. I snap, grabbing hold of my suit jacket and pulling it off. Just thinking of the deity had me feeling overwhelmed with a cluster of emotions rivaling one another. Part anger and part self-pity. If drowning myself in sorrow for almost my entire life wasn't enough, I guess the moon goddess saw it fit to pin a batshit crazy she-wolf hell-bent on making me her mate. Drawing out a long breath, I let my body relax its tense muscles. How much further are we? Not much. Nightwake's borders are just up this hill. Weston mumbled, peering out the tinted windows. Sure enough, the further up the hill we went, I began to catch sight of a large house, no doubt the Alpha's mansion if the big Nightwake crest flag wasn't a dead giveaway. The presence of their pack members filtered through my body. It was decent. Decent enough not to fall to 8th place in the rankings, but not good enough to go before 5th. The van made a sudden stop just behind a similar SUV belonging to another Alpha. Narrowing my eyes, I took note of the symbol on the doors. No way. Weston mumbled, pressing his face closer to the glass. He curved his hands over his eyes, trying hard to squint. Is that the Greyhound insignia? My eyebrows shot up. Greyhound was here? My thoughts wandered over to the identity of Alpha Celine Crestfield, the adoptive daughter of Meredith Crestfield. She was a mysterious one. Most didn't even know her first name, but being rank 1 doesn't happen by luck. Still, even with my prestigious information team, there wasn't much I could gather. Meredith Crestfield was not to be taken lightly. She strayed away from social events, didn't get involved in other packs. She was solely focused on her own pack. Kind of like me. Some say she's as sweet as honey. Others say she's worse than the devil. I felt a slight smirk tug up my lips. If by chance the Alpha had personally come here, it would seem like my attendance to this meeting wasn't so pointless now. Getting a look firsthand of this notorious she-wolf would serve me well. Sliding the van door open, I stepped out, the soil and gravel releasing a satisfying crunch under my shoes. Immediately, all the wolves that were outside bowed their heads. My wolf's presence alone, even without intentionally releasing my dominance, was enough to alert them of the dangers my wolf and I possess. It was pin-drop silent. I walked on, surprised that the Alpha wasn't here to greet me, and admittedly a little irked at the fact. So much for pleasantries. Weston, who had asked for directions, soon walked by my side with his hands clasped behind him. The man he had asked directions for had directed us to going to the large building, said that the Alpha's office was at the 2nd floor. The warriors we had brought with us stayed behind, safeguarding the van and watching out for possible attackers. Do you think the Hellhound is pretty? My eyes cut coldly to Weston, who immediately slapped a hand over his mouth, as if he had said it out loud. A slight snarl slipped through my lips, but I managed to rein in the weight of it. He flinched, submitting with his head down out of instinct before casting me a strange look, a look that questioned me about my defensive reaction. I couldn't understand it myself. My wolf's emotions surged forward with vicious growls leaving him. His fur was ruffled, body posture predatory. His eyes were narrowed, tail and ears up in alert of the threat. Threat? Weston was a threat? Thankfully, I was quite good at keeping a straight face because surely in the inside I was confused as fuck. There was no killing intent in Weston, so why in the goddess' name was he acting so defensive for? My wolf was not only acting completely out of character, but now he's trying to attack my pack members too? My own beta? I frowned and mentally tightened my hold on him. He thrashed around, growling louder with resistance, but I kept him down. Keep walking. I tell Weston, ignoring his previous question. I felt a tinge of something, heavy inside of me, something that made me feel bound, like I was wrapped around in silver and chained to the walls. It was an odd sensation, and it all revolved around her. Celine Crestfield, a woman I only knew of by name, never once meeting or seeing. I wondered what she looked like, what she was like, what she liked. Was she like what the rumors said of her? Was she completely different? Were there any truth behind them? Was it all fabricated lies? My wolf pondered with me, his earlier rage forgotten about once he started thinking of the faceless silhouette we had in mind of her. No matter how many times I tried building an image of her, I couldn't. I knew nothing of her. No physical description of any sort. It was slightly intriguing and all the more exciting. I felt my palm twitch, like a game of chase. I was chasing after information of this almost phantom being and never coming close to getting even a pinch of information on her. Greyhound didn't attend any pack meetings with the Chancellor, but I knew they've met. It would be impossible for her to have become Alpha without meeting him. The blood oath with her Beta and Gamma would require his presence. It's not like anyone could force her into agreeing into a meeting. Surely, she had a few invitations, but she rejected all of them. I couldn't exactly go up to Williams and ask about her either. He was meant to be a mediator and not to be biased over any pack. Very much like myself, Celine never attended those annoying galas either. The galas that only served to flaunt the pack's riches through luxury goods and designer clothing. The very same one where alphas would survey competition and plot some new scheme all at the same time of shaking hands and making pleasantries. That superficial life is not for me. That's what my reputation was built up from. I could care less about what people had to say about me regarding my ways as an alpha, but I will never allow someone to claim I would reject my mate that the goddess would have blessed me with.